Hello and good morning, and welcome to our third episode of Innovators in Education. I'm here in the North Green Screen Studios, and our program today is, of course, sponsored by the Nord Family Foundation, and we thank them for that. Uh, Pretty simple format, conversational, and our goal is to collect all the great things happening in classrooms around the country and share those out with all the great teachers that want some inspiration and some new ideas. We want you to take the best of what we talk about and actually go back to your classroom and do something. It's about taking that first step off the cliff and really trying something innovative and new to bring your students into the educational world, the fun world of education. I am joined this morning with Ben Shinabery from the Dick&Jane Project from down in Columbus. Although Ben is from Mentor, he's a Northeast Ohio guy like myself, so I have to give him props for that. And the best way to introduce Ben, and I have to read this quote because I liked it. I've done a lot of digging in this project. And I stole this quote, I think, from your TEDx that you did, which I have to show him off for that because that's cool. And here's the quote. So it's the Dick&Jane Project gives young people the confidence to know that their words can impact people beyond the classroom walls in a very real way. And we have talked a lot on this episode, on these episodes with our last two guests about the idea of legacy and about the idea of students owning what they do and having that global voice at such a young age. So if I had to do a tagline, if I had to steal something from you, it would be that for here. So Ben, why don't you give us a little bit of introduction as to who you are, how you got started, and then give us the elevator speech of what the Dick&Jane Project is, and then we'll jump into it.
Sure. So the Dick&Jane Project is still a pretty young organization. We are 4 years old.
Okay.
And so, basically the elevator speech for the Dick&Jane Project is that we partner middle school students with music producers to create professional radio-ready songs. And so basically the process for this is a 2-week process in the schools, in the classrooms, which we value greatly. Really bringing the music producers, the music community, the arts communities
Sure.
into the schools.
That's cool.
To collaborate, not only with the students, but also with the teachers.
Yeah.
So basically how it looks is we break the kids up into groups of anywhere from 1 to 5 students.
Okay.
We pair those students with a music producer. So for the sake of this interview, we'll call that the songwriting team, those students and that music producer. So that team meets for 2 weeks.
Cool.
The first week, those students and the producer are working on writing lyrics for songs and providing the song direction. What kind of genre do they want their song to be? So that first day, the students and the producers will talk about a theme.
Okay.
What do we want our song to be? What do we want to tell the world? What do we want to say? And so they'll spend usually the first day arguing about that theme. They'll also
I want to say that.
Right. Oh yeah, and I'll probably get into later in the interview too about we think of middle school students as being 12-year-olds that are just running around aimlessly in the world, but really the Dick&Jane Project argues that they have legitimate things to say.
Sure.
That they, as middle school students, have a really fresh perspective on the world that really, as us as adults, can really value.
Yeah.
From learning from their experiences and just the way that they see the world. And our music producers value that as well. When they go in and they begin to work with the students, they see those students not as 12-year-olds. They see them as legitimate contributors to a song that they are going to produce.
Yeah.
And so once that theme's decided and that genre for the song is decided, so a lot of times the producers will pull out YouTube and they'll sit in the classroom and they'll figure out what kind of song do you like.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like rap? Do you like rock? Do you like indie? And so really figuring out what kind of genre of the song they want to create. Then for the rest of that first week, the students and the producers are working on creating lyrics.
Okay.
And that's really the crux of the Dick&Jane Project. Giving that student the voice.
It's creative writing on steroids.
Exactly. And really what those steroids are is that purpose, is that real world implications that come with producing a song.
Yeah.
Giving the students a medium that they can produce something outside of just posting it on the bulletin board outside of the classroom or posting on the refrigerator at home. And so those students and the producers work on those lyrics, work on deciding what sound they want in their song, and so they'll do that for the entire first week. So then the weekend comes, where that music producer goes into his recording studio or some recording studio around the city of Columbus, and he creates a demo song for the students, basically a first draft of the song.
Sure.
And so he'll go in and he'll take all of the lyrics they developed during that first week. He'll take all of the genres and all of the musical direction that the students provided and create this demo song to share with the kids then that following week on Monday. And so basically that producer will bring that demo into the students, and then they'll listen to it.
That's an amazing turnaround to go
for a week,
nothing to having
basically
a semi-produced song
in 1 week.
Wow.
And typically what happens is those students hear that song, the demo, on Monday, typically produce. In terms of so one thing that the Dick and Jane Project really we pride ourselves on is the high quality of music.
Yeah.
And so I said earlier that the songs we produce are professional and radio quality. The reason why I say radio quality is because all of our songs do get played on the radio down in Columbus.
That's so cool.
We have a couple of radio partnerships down there where we have, I can tell the students on the first day of the workshop, everybody that's sitting in this room as a part of the Dick and Jane Project is going to write a song that is going to be heard by thousands of people on the radio.
Yeah, and there's stations that they know,
and that
they've heard actual famous people, for lack of a better term, on.
Yep.
That's astounding, and it's funny. We've seen this progression, I think, in these first 3 episodes of kids keeping blogs and sharing on media like YouTube, to students writing books and sharing an iBooks author, and now to talk about actual radio stations. And I know I'll show some of the other places that the students' work is available, but I have up on the screen behind me, which Dave will go to for me. I cue Dave off screen. I love the values that you guys have, that you've created, and what I love most about them, honestly, is the order in which they're in. Student-centered, the collaboration, the creativity, the empowerment, the listening. I think you've done a great job of talking about what that process looks like in a very short amount of time. I mean, so from start to finish, you have the week where you write the lyrics, you have your producers come back with something on Monday. Where do they go from there?
So typically, and like I said, when the middle school students, when they hear that demo, they think, oh my gosh, it's done. And that's not unique for a middle school student. Typically when they write or produce something, it's perfect. It's as good as they can make it. It's done. I can't revise it anymore.
I'm going to move on, yeah.
And so that's, a value of the Dick and Jane Project is to show them, how valuable revision is.
Sure. Yeah.
To show, this is good, but it can be great, and it can be excellent, and it can be as great as you want it to be. And so really to push those students to improve their lyrics, to give feedback to the producers on, we think the song should be faster. We think the song should be slower. We want a female vocalist to sing on this song rather than a male vocalist. We want, so really to jump out of their comfort zone, because they're also working with a music producer that is creating a song for them.
Sure.
And for them to be able to say, I don't like this, and to look at, it's tough.
How does that go? Do the kids jump right in to be critical of an adult professional coming in? I mean, will they really? I'm sure they don't like their work or parts of it, but what's that conversation look like? Because I taught middle school, and I know what the conversation can look like.
It varies.
Yeah.
There are, for the most part, students are pretty terrified.
Sure.
I've had students come to me as kind of the person that's overseeing the project and say, I don't know how to communicate. I want to tell the producer this thing, but I feel bad.
Yeah.
And really, it's talking about this is what the real world is like. We always talk about the Dick and Jane Project being a real world experience. This is one of those experiences where you have as a student you have this vision, and our job, the producer's job, is to take that vision and make it a reality. He can't do that unless you tell him what that vision is, and you tell him that is that what he did is not what you're envisioning.
Like they're working for you as a student.
Yeah. And obviously there will be those times where you have the student that'll stop halfway through listening to the demo for the first time and say, I don't like it. Like, what's going on?
Make it better.
And so all power to them.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Do you guys usually go in with language arts teachers, or how is it that you make that first initial step into the school? Like, what's that school side of it look like?
Yeah, I prefer to work with on the language arts side of it.
Okay.
And really the way, like I said, we've been around for 4 years, and we've been fortunate to, for schools to reach out to us, whether it be language arts teachers or music teachers or principals that
Sure.
are interested in bringing our programming into the school. And so, it is music based. The final product is a song, but certainly the educational value is the English language arts and the writing aspects and that stuff.
Are teachers grading this as well? Is it an extended project? Is it just some project-based learning that they're doing? Do you know how the schools are they just saying you're creating a professional song on the radio? That's our goal. That's what we want to focus on?
To my knowledge, students have not been graded.
Yay. I love that answer. Thank goodness.
It's interesting to think about that. I mean, certainly I would say you could grade something on participation.
Yeah.
But it's really impossible to grade the songwriting process, I think.
Yep.
Because typically the students that are not as skilled writers as students that are skilled writers typically write better songs.
Huh.
And there could be a couple of reasons for that. One is that they haven't been given the opportunity to fully express themselves.
It's all the rules of writing that they're following and
exactly.
have to worry about. Okay.
And I wouldn't say that we walk in on day one and say throw all of grammar and all spelling out the door.
Just do whatever you want. Yeah.
But it's kind of maybe something that we just kind of slide under the rug and be like, well, I'm not going to harp on you for forgetting a comma.
Yeah.
Most musicians and producers don't use that grammar because really what it is about is portraying your thoughts through music.
It's that
and
content driven,
you don't read that. But yeah, it is an interesting point to make that that those students that are struggling writers usually are benefiting the most from it because they're really seeing something again that they don't think possible in that day one.
Yeah.
And to see, even just to hear their words in a chorus that in a professional quality is very, very empowering for the students.
Yeah, it's one thing to sing to yourself in the car. It's another thing when you have someone that knows how to do it. And in the background, you can see in 4 short years, well over 250 students, over 7 albums have been produced, tons of radio play. I have a link in the description of this video that's running to the YouTube channel, which has a whole bunch of those videos on there. And it also has some of the shorts that you guys have produced about the process. Another great quote that I stole from you that I love reading quotes to people that they said because it makes you feel smart, like I said that. And it's radio play is not the end goal. Radio play is a teaching tool that inspires students to want to write and to want to learn. And that works in perfect with the no grading and the idea of creative writing and where their work can go. The other big question I have, so you get this great group of kids that really want to work on what they're writing. How have you found producers to give up weekends, musicians to come in? Because there's a ton of musicians. I'll put them up later. I mean, you guys have worked with a lot of people.
A lot. And so that really goes back to the to the birth of the Dick&Jane Project, where 4 or 5 years ago in Columbus, I was starting to play guitar myself and starting to get back into playing piano. I grew up playing piano, reading sheet music, and there was a magical epiphany moment of me realizing that I didn't need to have music in front of me to still be able to play the piano. The whole theory aspect of music. So I was really falling in love with music, and also just getting to know the music scene, getting to know the musicians, going to open mics. Particularly is really where the Dick&Jane Project was born. Was me going to one specific open mic down in Columbus, getting to know other musicians, realizing how talented so many people in the city were at playing music. And then I started going to shows, and I started seeing bands play it, and I'm like, this is unbelievable. And as an educator and as just a citizen of Columbus, I started to get frustrated with how talented so many people in the city were, yet the only way they were really making money was by playing at midnight at a bar for a bunch of people that have been drinking for 4 hours.
Work 2 jobs and then happen to do that at night.
And they're lucky to go home with $50 in their pocket.
Yeah.
And it really is a shame. And that's not unique to Columbus. I think that's unique to
I'm sure the Cleveland
to all
music
cities.
scene, yeah, it's going to be the same way.
And so, again, this was just at a very creative point in my life where I was, I had just graduated college. I kind of had the freedom to, to play around with things, and so eventually, I started gathering lyrics that elementary school kids had written, and sharing them with the musicians that were at the open mic.
Yeah.
And again, very, very fortunate that this particular open mic that I went to in Columbus at the Taj Mahal restaurant and bar. I mean, just you'd never expect it, but it's just some of the most talented musicians that latched on to this, and that just enjoyed. Again, this was at the very beginning, but they just enjoyed having something written by a student and transforming it into a song.
So they were almost doing this before it was even a project, just
absolutely
on a creative whim almost.
We weren't recording them. We really weren't even necessarily communicating with the students at that time to say, hey, listen to this. It was more of just we got up in front of 20 people at an open mic and started singing the songs, and it was just fun. And then as time went on, we started to realize the educational value that was within this project, and it really just it just kept snowballing. And at the time, I was, really I wanted to reform education. I wanted to be that innovator in education.
We have nothing wrong with that in this room. We need more people that want to innovate. Yeah.
But I must have had 100 ideas for doing it. And once this idea started to roll, I just never got away from it. It just kept rolling and rolling. And before I knew it, there were people from all over Columbus just wanting to get involved.
So are the schools purchasing a package to do this? Is it the musicians or volunteering time? What are the logistics behind that?
The musicians are absolutely not volunteering their time.
Good. Because they put a lot of time in, I think. And when you watch the videos, the quality, it's the same CD quality you would expect from anyone else that's writing a song. So it's definitely not shorted. You're not shorting the kids at all, I think, in the process, for sure.
It typically takes a music producer from start to finish 60 hours to produce a song. And that includes visiting the classrooms, that includes talking with the students, that includes making the demo, that includes producing the song after that 2 weeks where they're meeting with the students is really where they're going into the studio and really producing this high-quality song, getting other musicians to be included as well, finding the right vocalists, finding all of these right pieces, mixing the song, mastering the song. I mean, all of those things take so much time.
That's a lot.
And if we were to ask people to volunteer, it just, they might do it once, they might do it, twice if we're lucky, but after that, it's just so much work. And even the value that's there, it's at some point you have to look at yourself as an individual and say, I just can't do this. I
still have 2 jobs to work, and I still want to play at night.
Exactly. But we absolutely value, and as we grow, I envision a future in 50 years where every city, has musicians that work with students to write songs that are on the radio. I mean, that's as jobs.
That'd be a great job to have. Yeah. Let's talk about Airplay a little bit and the reach of this student's work. And I have in the background, I just grabbed some screenshots a couple days ago of some of the videos, and those are all from the student videos just to show the views. Those are pretty good views. At the bottom of the screen, you can see you can go to iTunes, Spotify, Bandcamp, and find these songs as well.
It's good to see that there's no thumbs down.
Yes. You're right. There's not a single thumbs down in any of them. That's impressive. That's more impressive than the numbers to me. People thumb down me all the time. It's horrible. What does radio airplay look like? And you can give shout-outs to the stations, too.
Sure.
I think they deserve it. But, I mean,
Absolutely.
What did that look like when you first went to a radio station and said, I have this produced song from a 12-year-old? That was three questions.
So the first station to really buy in was the NPR station down in Columbus, WCBE 90.5 FM.
Okay.
And we approached them, and really, it was back when we only had 4 songs maybe produced. Now we're at 71.
Wow.
But at that time, we approached them with this idea of, and so this idea continues on to today.
Sure.
Where we have a 5-minute segment on WCBE called the Dick&Jane Project Song of the Week.
Oh,
so
okay.
it airs every Friday at 11:55 a.m.
Nice.
It actually have live streaming if anybody's listening and they'd like to tune in.
That's
on
like
Friday.
actual normal day timing, too.
Right.
I was like, are they pigeonholing this at like 3 a.m.
Right.
so that the kids can't even be awake to hear it?
Prime time. And so basically, now once the students are done writing their song, we always have an exit interview where we sit down with the students and we audio record them talking about the song, talking about the process, and from that interview we take sound bites. And we use those sound bites within the first minute or two of the Dick&Jane Song of the Week segment.
Cool.
So they're explaining the song, they're talking about it. Then the song is played in the middle, and then we have a little outro at the end. And so that's a weekly thing that happens every week on Friday on WCBE. And so that's cool. They were the first people to buy in, and I honestly can't remember the meeting or anything. I think it was just we were so passionate at the time. I don't think we let them say no.
That helps. And another thing I want to point out, too, as I remember the pictures I'm putting up behind me, is you guys work across schools as well.
Absolutely.
Which I think is pretty cool. And this is a snippet from one of those videos where the students are talking about what they're doing. And to break down the walls is huge. It's one thing to bring professionals into a building, but to allow students to see that there are other students doing things like that. I wanted to make sure to put this up too because this is just some of your artists from your website.
And that's probably not even half.
No, that's probably the first pioneers to do it. And these are all local musicians, right?
Absolutely.
So these are all Columbus area people.
Yep.
Big shout out to them.
The really cool thing about this just brings to my mind, a lot of times middle school students especially aren't able to go out into their community and watch live music shows. Because typically they're 18 or 21 and over to get into these places to see these bands. So what this does too is it introduces them to the local scene. I hate saying local, to the Columbus scene, to the music city and the Columbus music scene. And they're buying their albums.
That's awesome.
They're listening to and more so than anybody else does. I mean, because they they're making this personal connection. And I think there's a value there too, rather than them listening to. And there's nothing wrong with Taylor Swift and Justin Bieber and all of the pop stars, but it is important to have that personal interaction with the music and the art that you're appreciating.
Yeah, I think students have got used to the reality TV show idea of music, where it really only takes 20 minutes a night to make a pop star or someone. And all these artists and all the other ones too. I mean, I found them on YouTube and iTunes and everywhere else. And that's great that the kids, because that's where our students are going to find their music. They're not buying CDs or cassettes anymore. Some of you might not even know what that is. So to see digital music gaining momentum that way, I think is great, especially the cost associated, I would imagine, with putting something onto iTunes instead of having to label and produce and package a CD and put out has to be great for these guys too.
Absolutely. And we have made physical CDs.
Wait, I think I got pictures. No, I don't. I lied.
But, and again, that's something that usually the schools want to have, this physical CD. And we have students make artwork for each of the songs too, which is a whole other rabbit hole that we could go down. But it is interesting. When we first started professionally producing all of the songs that we created, we made these physical copies.
Yeah.
And it didn't take us very long to realize that the students actually cared more that their song was on iTunes.
They probably don't even have a CD player at home. This doesn't fit in my iPhone.
Right. That was kind of one of my first, I'm old moments type of thing.
Hey, that makes me really old. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what's going into these songs content-wise. What do you find that the middle school student wants to sing about or share in their writing?
It's the easy answer, I guess, is that it varies.
Okay.
And I mean, we've had we have happy songs, we have sad songs, we have love songs, we have breakup songs, and really, what typically happens at the beginning of the process is I see that the students immediately resort back to the things and the lyrics they hear on the radio.
Okay.
And usually it's really sad to see those things come out. And a lot of times, well, to give you an example, I had one group, all very, very smart students. If I had to guess, they probably all get straight A's, especially in English class. They had written 50. I counted 50 different drafts, 50 different songs.
Separate songs?
Separate songs.
That's a lot of writing.
Because again, overachiever type of thing.
Sure, yeah.
So I sat down with them and went through, not all of them, but probably half dozen, and said, what does this song mean to you? And they couldn't really tell me.
They were writing for the sake of writing.
Yep. And each song, and it took us so long for them to finally write. And most of these songs were uplifting. You can do it, be happy. But what the song they actually ended up writing that actually meant something to them was about failing. And when you really dig deep and you really find, what is going on in your brain. And it's really that producer's job and our job to help them discover what's going on in their brain. The first day of Dick and Jane, I give this big motivational speech where I try to convince them that you're all, as middle school students, you are natural lyricists. What's going on in your brain is what all singer-songwriters try to experience, what they try to get back to. And you've got it. You might not believe me. You might not believe that you have it, but we're gonna help you find it. We're gonna pull it out of you. And eventually, they buy in, whether they realize it while it's happening, or whether they realize it 6 months later when they're listening to their song on the radio and they realize, oh, I wrote that.
Like, wow, do I really feel like that? Is it okay? Yeah, when I was in the classroom, I taught middle school, 7th grade, and you'll get notes or you'll get these peerings into writings and see a side of a student that you never expected. And I've probably listened to everything on YouTube that you guys have produced, and some of them I listen to and I think to myself, I wonder if that student was really like that, or if they're this bright, shiny, happy person, and then they have this beautifully written but tragically sad song about something happening in their lives or the pressures that they feel. What's the emotional, I don't want to say the emotional toll, but what is that emotional process like when these students hear something that they produce that might be about not unicorns and ponies and rainbows?
It's
because you have to get sucked into that. I keep interrupting you, but you got to get sucked in just as a human being to see this 12-year-old kid hear something amazing.
Yeah, and typically the first emotion is kind of like a shocked embarrassment almost, in terms of I can't believe that this is real.
Yeah.
And pretty much about 5 minutes after that happens, it's them telling all of their friends, I just created the best thing in the world.
Cool.
This is unbelievable. It's the best song I've ever heard. And then that usually lasts for a couple days. And then finally where, they get to, when they really talk about it in those exit interviews, where they're actually able to really reflect on that experience.
Yeah.
And I think that's when it really realizes what they had written, what they had said. And it's empowering to them. And it's an interesting point that you bring up in terms of how confident they are that they express themselves fully. Certainly that's a goal of ours, and it's almost something that we won't really know the output until many, many years later. One thing that we started to do was ask students when they first start, we want to do some longitudinal studies. We really want to know how this impacts you beyond the school year.
2-3 weeks that you're able to do it, sure.
Right.
And so your first group are they seniors now? Have you had any graduate?
No, we haven't had any graduate. We've got some juniors and some seniors now.
Okay.
Which is just bizarre.
Yeah, that'll make you feel old.
Yeah.
Kids get older, I don't.
Yeah.
So that's good. Have there been live? I know that live performances, or do you do a night where you're able to do something earlier and not at a bar where you got to be 21 for the kids to see them performed?
Definitely.
Okay.
And there's been a lot of internal back and forth where the producers that are working with the students, they value creating those professional quality songs because they know every time that student presses play or every time they share that song with somebody, it's going to be that high quality.
Yep.
And there was this sense of fear almost that doing some live shows, there's so many variables where something could go wrong.
Yeah.
And we're slowly getting past that.
Sure.
By basically assembling an incredible group of musicians to play these live songs, where it's not necessarily the musicians and producers that recorded the song, but it's musicians and producers that, instead of taking that time to go into the school and create the songs, they're going to take the time to practice every week to be prepared for live performances, because live performances do have so much value, even just for the students to be able to see their song performed live, but also for community members to visually see musicians on stage taking the words that these students have written so seriously, and closing their eyes and playing the guitar riff for this song. I mean, there's a lot of power to visually seeing that. So to answer the question, we've done some, but we want to do more. And again, it's a lot, finding those unique venues where those types of performances can happen is certainly, it's not impossible, but it's a marketing struggle.
I think there's a huge disconnect between the idea of live music and produced music that our students are used to, and the difference between that. I'm a huge concert junkie. I've been to hundreds, probably thousands of concerts. I absolutely love live music, and you can really tell a band and their performanship and ability via the live stage.
Absolutely.
And I think that's great that our students are able to get to that a little bit earlier and to understand those things, and maybe not take for granted. It's cool that the community can see community members that they probably didn't even know were in the local music scenes or the Columbus music scenes, but they're probably working next to them in a business, but at night they're doing this, and to be able to connect all those things. You guys are just in the Columbus area now, which is where you're located out of. What's the farthest that you've gone so far to a school? Or what are some of the schools that you've worked with?
In our first year of existence, where we were really just testing everything out, we actually worked with a summer camp in Cincinnati.
Oh, wow. That's a pretty good drive.
So the summer camp was comprised of 54 students from 13 different countries that all came together to meet. And so we wrote one song with 54 people from 13 different countries who spoke 12 different languages. So we learned a lot from that experience.
That's pretty unique. It's kind of like a We Are the World from the 80s.
Right.
Just buying them all together.
Yeah. But that really kind of shows the history of the organization in terms of where we're at now. It took a lot of thinking and a lot of changing and a lot of reflection to really get to where we are at now, to know, okay, this is what the Dick&Jane Project is, and this is what we do.
Yeah, and I forgot to say at the beginning or mention this, but I actually met Ben at the OSBA, the Ohio School Boards Association conference in Columbus, which was, last November-ish or something?
Fall, before it got really cold.
Yeah, so remember that if you're a school board member out there or something, when you go through Vendors Row and you see those little placards that things are going on, actually go to those. They're worth it, because, I got Ben to come up here. Woof. So this is a really cool project. You're still looking to expand. You're still looking to do more schools. People in the wonderful world of Twitter are watching us on YouTube. I'll put tons of links to all of these things so that you can see them, and so you can get a hold of Ben and the Dick&Jane Project to look into bringing this to your school, maybe even replicating it in your city and working and helping you guys to expand it.
Absolutely.
We've been talking like half hour, 40 minutes now. Is there anything I've missed in the grand scope of the project that you want to make sure that we get out here?
Boy, we've had such a great conversation.
I feel like we've talked about so much. I don't even know.
Just keep it rolling, yeah.
Okay, so I have to do our final questions,
Great.
Which I've altered a little bit because you don't have to stand in front of kids every day, which is pretty awesome. You don't have to be in a classroom all the time. So, first question, what's one thing from your perspective that you would want to see change immediately in education?
So, and to preface...
And you won't offend anyone, don't worry.
To preface, you sent me these questions ahead of time. And
I did,
and I thought long and hard about it. This one, not so much. So before I was doing the Dick&Jane Project, I was a preschool teacher.
Oh, okay.
So first, to answer the question, the first thing I would do, if I could change something, was increase the wage that preschool teachers make in early education to a livable wage.
I think that's fair.
Now, granted, if it was a livable wage, the Dick&Jane Project might not ever...
You'd still be there.
...have started, and I would still be there. But it's really, it's something I'm really passionate about in terms of, and when I hear people talk about early childhood education, I hear about all of these reforms and all of these possibilities that it's, you're not going to keep great teachers, not going to bring in good teachers unless you make that, livable,
Yeah, and
it's so important.
And that pre-K through third grade area, I mean, what our kids pick up from that and what they need, it's a ton of work.
Yep.
Seventh graders were hard enough to manage. I can't imagine preschool kids.
Right.
What's one thing that you think's working well that you would keep the same in education?
So again, I thought long and hard about this one.
It's a strange
really,
question.
Yeah. Because really, you think about what is education, what's going on, and if you could, if everything was scrapped and started, to try to fix the system and to really innovate it, the use of technology and the use of the internet.
Yeah.
I get kind of bothered when school, all students have phones, and there's the greater part of me thinks that students should be able to have access to their phones, but not just have access to it. Almost have a class to teach you how to use this thing that's in your pocket.
Yeah.
That you have access to all of the information you could ever need.
Yep.
It's almost as if we should be teaching that.
I love hearing that from someone who's not in the classroom, because I think any teacher you talk to, their biggest complaint is students don't really know how to use tech. Not like we do.
Right.
Not for educational purposes. Not for creating these huge projects. That's pretty huge. Long-term career goal.
I just want to have an impact on the education system. I want to.
So you've done that. What's next? No, just kidding.
Yeah, I want to keep doing. I mean, I think that the amount of students and the amount of teachers that the Dick&Jane Project has impacted is greater than zero. So that's great. But certainly even the drive up from Columbus here to Cleveland, I often just think of, as I see every town that passes by. I mean, really, that registers in my head is there's more students.
Like there's 3 more schools, there's 5 more schools, yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, really, that's my vision. That's what drives me and keeps me going.
That's pretty cool. What about just for this school year, which is 3 months, if less? But,
yeah.
But what's going on right now that you want to see come to an end, or what's that one goal for this year?
So, the short-term goal that if it happens by the end of this school year, great. If it doesn't, but I would, what I really hope one day is that I am either walking somewhere, or even like I picture myself driving in my car with my window down in the summer, and another car pulls up next to me and they're playing a Dick&Jane song.
That would be pretty neat.
I just want to randomly hear a Dick&Jane song.
Shout at that person, yeah. I know who wrote that.
Right, and just to really, because that means that it's being saturated within our community.
Oh, yeah.
Saturated within the music's
There's something to be saying for mainstream, Best day of your career so far working with kids? Such
a tricky question, and I think that
this is the stumper. Thank you. I wrote it myself.
I mean, it's really, success in education. What's that?
I said you only get one.
Success in education, I think, is measured by the impact long term.
Sure.
And so I think the answer to this question would change every year, every 5 years. I think about this one student. This was back when I was in college. I had just started teaching at an after-school program for the YMCA.
Okay.
And there was a first grader that was working on his. He had a book that he was supposed to read. And I was talking with him, and he said, "I don't know how to read. I can't read this thing." And so I said, "Well, let's read the back of the book. The summary of the book. Let's just get through that." And we went word by word, and he was able to read every word on the back of the book.
Yeah.
And when he finished, I said, "Jack," that was his name. I said, "Jack, you need to remember for the rest of your life that you read every word on the back of this book, and you didn't think that you could."
Yeah.
And every day. So at this point, I'm like, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
So every day that I saw him after that, and it was daily. I said, "Jack, do you remember what you did?" He said, "Yeah, I read that. I read every word on the back of that book." I saw him 2 years after that, and I asked him. I said, "Jack, what did you do?" He said, "I read all the words on the back of that book." I would love to meet him and refine him again and ask him that. But I think that just demonstrates the long-term impact that is so important.
Yeah, that we have. It's that empathy. I keep coming back to this all the time. It's my stereotypical thing. It's that it's the person connection, whether it's musicians, producers, where they're using technology. It's that ability to help produce a student, a kid that understands that he has a part in this world. And the one thing that I forgot to ask, I need to, is how did you come up with the name? I remember the old Sally Dick and Jane books, but I didn't know if there was some larger connection.
So I mentioned the open mic and everybody playing the.
Yeah.
So it actually, the first step in that was when I was working as a preschool teacher. One of the parents donated a lot of books to us, and one of those books was a Read with Dick and Jane book.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was really funny that she would donate this book just because it was such a boring book. No, like I'm not going to read it to the preschoolers.
They've been there for so long, yeah.
So I took it home.
Yeah.
Because I thought, oh, this is really cool. And I actually I had the book open on my living room table when I was playing guitar, and I actually started singing the words from that book.
Oh.
And then I took that to the open mic, and I said, I'm going to sing a Dick and Jane song.
So you actually sang the book.
Yes.
That's pretty funny.
And then like again, snowballed from there.
See? It's the little things that you do. Remember that.
Absolutely.
So this has been really awesome. I've been a huge fan since I met him in November, and I'm really glad that you came up, Ben, and spoke with us.
Thanks for having me. It was fantastic.
So I can push this out to the masses. So this is the third episode. It went pretty well. Hopefully the streaming worked, and everyone's seeing anything, and I'll get this recorded and put up today. We appreciate everyone being with us to watch. And Ben, again, thank you very much. And until next time, we'll see you on Innovators in Education.